Ideas are worth spreading. But what if we don't question those ideas? Question them with a positive intention to be sure we truly understand those ideas and make them the best they can be. To be sure we can implement those ideas in the most efficient way with the least stress. Picture a meeting room in Japan. The topic under discussion is how to promote the company's new product. The boss at the head of the table tells the team how it's going to be. 3 of the team members are Japanese women. Let's call them Hitomi, Fumiko, and Sanae. Hitomi joined the company last year. She's a tech-savvy millennial, and she has a brilliant idea for how to promote the company's new product. Fumiko joined the company 10 years ago. She has serious doubts about what the boss is saying. Market conditions have changed, customers, more demands, and everything is changing. How can the old way still work? But she knows that if she questions the boss, he will get angry. Sanae has been with the company for 20 years. She knows her stuff, but she's too busy and stressed to think about the company's promotional strategy. She turns her mind to composing the emails that she needs to write. The meeting ends without a word from anyone. Hitomi goes back to her desk and starts to think seriously about how she can move to a different company where she can express her ideas. Fumiko goes and stops by her co-worker's desk, and she complains at length about how the boss never listens to anyone. And Sanae returns to her desk, and she starts to write those emails. She needs to be out of the office by 5 to be able to pick up her 3 children from nursery. Mottainai. This Japanese word says a lot. It's a shame. It's a waste. Imagine you get a delicious fruit tart from your coworker, but you're too busy and you forget about it, and it goes, kind of mushy. That's mottainai. But there is more serious mottainai in the workplace. For example, if you have a brilliant idea, but you're not able to express it, like Hitomi, that's mottainai. If you spend your time complaining instead of constructively questioning, like Fumiko, that's mottainai. And to be too busy and stressed to think and contribute at a higher level, that's mottainai. Do you see some mottainai in your workplace? This is not necessarily just women, not necessarily just Japanese. Do you recognize that suboptimal output, the inefficiency, and the stress? It doesn't have to be that way. Asking questions can help. And let me share with you some stories from real Japanese women who used questions in the workplace. One lady told me, "There are 20 members in my team. If one of us has doubts, usually everyone has doubts. So by one of us serving as a representative and asking the question, we can solve the problem. We don't have to waste time of everyone being concerned about the same thing without expressing it." And another lady told me, colleagues would send me requests, and I would arrange for translations. They would send me huge documents to translate in a very short time. And I asked questions to clarify what they really needed and by when. If I didn't ask those questions, I would have simply had to say, that's not possible. But when I did ask questions, I found out information that helped me to coordinate more efficiently. It helped me to get more translation done, to make the most of the translator's time, and to make everyone happy. So, if asking questions like this can lead to these kinds of success stories, Why don't Japanese women ask more questions in the workplace? Well, before I answer that question, let's look at the realities of today's workplace. Today's workplace is increasingly global, and misunderstandings are more likely in the global workplace. Why? Well, more diversity. Have you ever had a misunderstanding because you assumed something and someone else assumed something else? It happens, and especially if your colleagues have different backgrounds, different beliefs, and different values. Working remotely, you may find that you're working with colleagues from a different country. You rarely, if ever, have time for face-to-face communication. And how many times have you had a miscommunication due to something written in email? And heavier workloads. As global competition intensifies, workloads are getting heavier. People are more stressed. And when we're stressed, it's difficult to think clearly. It's difficult to think from the other person's perspective, which leads to more misunderstandings. So, in the global workplace, there are more misunderstandings. Questions can help to avoid those misunderstandings. So, why don't Japanese women ask more questions at work? Well, why would they? As human beings, we do what we have learned to do. And we usually want to fit in with society, so we follow the norms. Most Japanese people have been through an education system that did not teach them to ask questions, did not encourage them to ask questions. Listen to sensei, the teacher. Get the right answer. And don't make a fool of yourself in front of your classmates. And in Japanese society, where Confucian ideals are strong, we should respect seniority and authority and men. It's rude to question them. We don't want to offend them. We don't want to create tension in the environment. And so we learn the Japanese concept of gaman, putting up with the situation. And I say we because I went through a similar education system in the UK. And I've lived in Japan for 25 years, and I value fitting in with society. But I've also learned over the years that while quiet observation may have helped in the past when people communicated more face-to-face, they shared the same values, and they focused on limited tasks, things have changed. In the global workplace, we need new norms, new ways of thinking, new communication. So if you want to ask more questions, here are 3 suggestions. Paraphrase. Paraphrase means repeating what the other person said in your own words. So let me give you an example from a conversation I had with Stuart Eyre, who was the person who did the illustrations that you've been enjoying today. The conversation went something like this. I want an illustration of a Japanese woman's profile.
So you want the person's profile from the side?
Oh, no, sorry. When I say profile, I actually mean looking forward, kind of like a Facebook profile picture. That's what I mean. Now, if Stuart hadn't checked at that time, he might have wasted time in doing these illustrations that weren't what I wanted. And that would have led to suboptimal output, inefficiency, and stress for both of us. Listen for gaps. So if there is something that doesn't make sense to you, ask for clarification. I attended a wonderful presentation by Miki Iwamura. She's Google Japan's Chief Marketing Officer. And she talked about how diversity triggers innovation. She said, diverse teams lead to amazing and unexpected questions. Now, something was missing for me here. There was a gap because, in my experience, Japanese women don't tend to ask questions in the workplace. So I plucked up the courage and raised my hand and asked Miki how she encouraged Japanese women to ask more questions in the workplace. And she said two things: training and creating the right environment. And the third one, express your curiosity. So get into the habit of wondering why people say what they say or think what else, do what they do. Ask with questions like who, what, why, when, where, and how, rather than questions that can be answered with a simple yes or no. I used to pride myself on being a great listener, because I would listen quietly while the other person spoke. Maybe we have some great listeners out there. And one day, a colleague visited me from overseas, and she said to me, "Helen, I just feel like you're not interested in anything I say. You never ask me any questions." This was a huge shock for me. And it prompted me to start asking questions. When we ask questions, that shows interest in the other people. It shows that we're paying attention, and people like that. We can also learn something. And I love this quote by Mark Twain. "He who asks is a fool for 5 minutes, but he who does not ask remains a fool forever." And the same saying exists in Japanese. Kiku wa issho no haji, kikanu wa issho no haji. But doing something different takes courage. Courage to step out of your comfort zone. And when we step out, it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable, like being on a TED stage, so uncomfortable. But that is when the magic happens. We learn something new. Our comfort zone grows. But sometimes we face an unsupportive environment. So I have two more stories for you with deep appreciation to the Japanese women who shared these stories. I was working on a travel guide, and I arrived at work at 10 o'clock every morning and ran for the last train at 11:45 every night. I worked most weekends too. The atmosphere in the office was tense, with everyone working frantically towards the deadline. The boss was rushed off her feet, and she was really stressed out, and I didn't feel comfortable about asking her any questions. I didn't feel I could ask her anything. I thought she might blow up, and I was so scared. Another lady shared this story with me. We were working on a large and important bilingual report. My job was to proofread the Japanese translations. I found out that my father was going into hospital for surgery, and I wanted to take a half day off to be with him. I worked late into the night to finish as much of the proofreading as I could. But the next day, my boss refused to let me take a half day off. I tried to convince him by showing him how little of the work remained, but he still said no. I couldn't be with my father at the time of his surgery, and my family was furious. So sometimes people in senior positions act inappropriately. Maybe they're too stressed, or actually they lack confidence, or they lack some kind of awareness. So dear kacho, dear bucho, dear shacho, what do you really want? You want your team to succeed, right? Well, isn't the best way to succeed to implement the very best ideas? The very best ideas with the support of your team. And in Japan today, with the emphasis on working women, that means listening to the women in your team and encouraging their questions. If they question you, it's not that they disrespect you. It's not that they necessarily disagree with your idea. And it's not that they're trying to take all the credit. creating a team where people feel comfortable to ask questions can help you to implement the very best ideas with the support of your team. Misunderstandings are more likely in the global workplace. But the global workplace also brings diversity. And that diversity brings the potential for countless ideas that can benefit us in ways that we'd never imagined. But we must overcome the mottainai of having a great idea but being uncomfortable to speak up, like Hitomi. We must overcome the mottainai of complaining instead of constructively questioning, like Fumiko. We must overcome the mottainai of being too busy and stressed to think and contribute at a higher level, like Sanai. Encourage Japanese women to ask more questions in the workplace. In fact, encourage everyone to ask more questions. Watch the video of this TED Talk with your team and invite a discussion about how it applies to you and what you can do differently to overcome the mottainai. And enjoy some more fruit tart. Ideas are worth spreading. Let's question those ideas. Question them with a positive intention to be sure we truly understand those ideas and make them the best they can be. To be sure we can implement those ideas in the most efficient way with the least stress. Questions are worth spreading.